Hello, my name is Joe Austin and today I'm with Robert McClenaghan. And Robert, can you just tell us a wee bit who you are and what you represent?
Okay, so my name is Robert McClenaghan. I'm an advice worker with the Falls Residents Association. I'm also a tour guide with Coista the Kimmy. And then, as a part of that work then, I also have a cross-community workload in terms of the Falls Shankill Forum.
Okay, we're going to return to the Shankill Forum, the relationship and what you actually do. But let's explain that we're here to introduce the film. Sylvia's got the film. Unfortunately, she's had an accident and can't be here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the film, what the film means to you, and also how the film comes into your everyday work, your cross-community work. So I suppose the first question I would like to maybe examine today, Wall of Shame, the title's a very provocative title. What does it represent for you?
Well, it was a bit provocative when Sylvie first mentioned it, but Walls of Shame is, for me, the fact that the walls were done 50 years ago, after the pogroms of August 1969, and we've had to live with that shame for the last 50 years. So there's walls in people's minds, as well as the physical walls, and that's what we're trying to deal with in the film, and that's what we're trying to deal with in real life, real time, between the Falls and Shankill communities.
How do you think that this film can bring a spotlight on that division that's created by conflict? How do you think the film works for that?
I think the film is unique. It's a unique insight to the day-to-day life of what it means to live close to an interface, close to the walls that divide the people of this city, and specifically the Falls and the Shankill. So we have been dealing together for the last number of years, about 8 years in the making, in terms of the Falls Shankill Forum. But we got to the point that there was actually a physical project to take down the gates at Townsend Street, and then fortuitously that's when Sylvie arrives in Belfast with the idea of covering the 50th anniversary of what happened in '69, the divisions, and then hard Brexit, and everything was going to impact on that. So it was an opportunity for us then to show that dialogue, or to show the world what's happening in terms of the walls between the Falls and the Shankill.
So your introduction to this film, which is the big point, and it's the reason we're actually here today. So in a one line, in a short sentence, how do you introduce the film? What do you say to the audience?
So I hope you enjoy. The film is about us, about our lives between the Falls and the Shankill. So thanks for watching, and hopefully it'll be an educational process for you as well.
Robert McClenaghan, thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
My name is Robert Harris and I work in the Lower Shankill Community Association as a restorative practitioner for Consensus. Some of the work that we're involved in would range from interface work right through till community interfaces, projects, housing, development, restorative justice. There's a wide range of work that we are involved in this community. We got involved with the Shankill and Falls Forum due to the interface issues around some of the interface gates that's around the two communities of the Lower Shankill and the Lower Falls. So me and Robert McClenaghan decided that there was a piece of work that needed to be done, which was greater than peace walls and gates. So we decided then to get together on a consortium type basis and to deliver a project that was far reaching than just gates alone. The Walls of Shame film, for me, takes a look at the ordinary people who live at either side of these peace walls. It shows that it's not just the gate that is the issue, that there is deeper issues the deeper you go. And that was one of the reasons why we decided to do a piece of work in and around the interface stuff and try and enhance the quality of life for people living on both sides of the wall. What I took out of the overall film after the first initial viewing was that it was well put together and it really portrayed the story of both communities, and it wasn't just a wishy-washy piece that covered interfaces again in Northern Ireland that we're used to seeing. For me, the message that I would ask people to take away from watching this film is don't get bogged down in the politics, because there is people who live on either side of these gates and walls, and that's the people we're trying to address, not the overall issue of the interface.
Peace comes dropping slow. Yeats's words echo round the walls in Belfast. Belfast, forever battered and bruised by the Northern Ireland conflict. These walls, called peace walls, were initially built by the British government in 1969 as temporary structures to curtail violence between the nationalist and unionist communities. These scars, which lacerate the city, have since been greatly added to following the Good Friday Agreement of 1998. The war is over, but these walls of shame are still there, visible and invisible.
My name is Robert McClenaghan. I'm an Irish Republican. I live here at the moment in the Divis area of West Belfast, and I have been involved or caught up in the conflict in Ireland since I was 11 years of age. So that has impacted on my life. You can still see the bullet holes here. I would also work as a tour guide on the Falls and the Shankill Road. Okay, so here we have an example on the wall. Trying to explain to tourists or to foreign people what the conflict was actually about, how the conflict started, what happened during it, how we get out the other end, and how it should never happen again. So here on the Falls, we were saying, how do you remember all the Republicans who died during the 25 years of the military conflict? So the community decided to build this garden itself to remember the Republicans who died. So for me, this is a personal space, but that's me. But if you think of yourself as someone from the other side of the wall, someone from the other side of the conflict, for them, this is a shrine to terrorism. This is a shrine to the IRA and should be destroyed. So even though the military conflict is over, we still have that conflict every day about legacy, about memory, and how do we deal with the past. So that battle, that political battle, is still going on. Then we meet at the gates that we call Checkpoint Charlie. That's it. Literally. Exactly, literally one step. And you have left the Catholics, the nationalists, the Republican community behind. And with that one step, you're now in the Protestant, the Unionist, the Loyalist community. And then we hand over to Noel. Okay, Noel. And he will bring the same tourists down the Shankill Road. Noel will do the second half of the tour. So thank you very much then, okay? Okay, Noel, a pleasure. Okay, take care now.
Think along the lines of, if you look up the street.
My name's Noel Large. I live here on the Shankill Road.
So vicious that you see over here. Over here.
I'm a Protestant, Unionist, Loyalist, brought up in a very Protestant, Unionist, working class background. Brought up very much to be fearful and be distrusting of Republicans.
This memorial is a perpetual reminder of an atrocity across the road. The IRA come round, they have a bomb in a car, they open fire in the pub, then they throw the bomb in, they get in the car and they drive off. But still, innocent people in the pub, boom. Look at the date, 23rd of October 93. And the good thing that came out of all this is the peace process was not derailed. And less than a year after those two atrocities, you have all the groups on ceasefire. Primarily, Republican and Loyalist paramilitaries have not attacked each other in a paramilitary sense, and long may that be the case. So we're going to finish our tour further down the road here.
I tell my story because I believe it. and I believe it's the truth. I don't tell it because I want to change the course of where we're going. You ask me about something that happened down there, I give you an opinion. The last thing I would want to do is be involved in propaganda. What I'm telling you is fact. Do you know what I mean? Because I've lived it. And people sometimes are interested in that. So it's important to me to tell my story. As regards to Shankill, traditionally we have been brought up to say nothing, to doff the cap at the big house and not tell our story out of a sense of loyalty.
Personally speaking, all they ever got was the BBC version, the British Broadcasting Corporation. So they got a one-sided version of what happened or what is happening here in Ireland. So I would give you a very clearly Irish Republican version, and he would give the British Loyalist version. And that's why we call the tour Conflicting Stories, because there's not one story. There's not one narrative about what happened in Ireland. So the tours is to say we now need to actively listen to the other. We don't have to agree with them, but we have to be able to let people listen to both Loyalist and Republican.
In the working class areas of Belfast, two memories are honoured. Two memories confront one another. In the north of Ireland, peace is a wall. The walls have their own history. Not one you will find in the official books, not a history told by the vanquished or the victor for that matter. They tell of the Republican saga from the War of Independence to the hunger strikers. Bobby Sands smiles down. Political prisoner, member of Parliament that Margaret Thatcher let die of hunger with 9 of his comrades. A martyr to the cause. Here, among his own in the heart of the Gaelic neighbourhood. The wall traces the outline of his profile. One person's memory is not necessarily that of another's. From the Irish Belfast to the English Belfast, we cross into Seanchille, to the other side of the wall, to loyalty to the Crown. Here are Her Majesty's subjects. Here the collective memory is a unionist memory. Here is honoured the memory of those who fell at the Somme. Here is perpetuated the historic victory of a Protestant king over a Catholic king. On this side of the wall is celebrated the military superiority of their community. The end of the armed conflict did not solve all the problems. The walls are still there to remind all that the stranger on the other side is still the enemy.
The Protestant Unionist community is on this side of the wall, and the Catholic Nationalist community is just up there. My name is Chris O'Halloran. My job is Project Director at Fourth Spring Inter-Community Group here in Belfast. There's been a lot of investment in creating an end to violence, but peace is more than an end of violence. What we have here, it's a kind of apartheid. It's almost where there's an uneasy peace. So people here, people who live on the Shankill and the Woodvale largely don't come through that interface gate. And the same is true in reverse. It's a separate living. And for us, that's not peace.
Fourth Springs Social Centre, located on one separating wall, was originally a Methodist church, which was burned out 3 times during the conflict.
I'm Donna Bates, and I live in Woodvale, and I live at an interface beside the Peace Walls. I go through the gates every Tuesday and every Thursday evening. and sometimes on a Monday night. It's a building which used for after schools and to bring two communities together. It's been here for a long time. I've been using the building for over 20 years. We do cooking together and we share stories.
You see, I think the setting of like this place, when we come and we meet up, it's a completely different story as whenever you were younger and whenever we would have been in the town. If we were in a place that was predominantly Protestant, like we would have been fearful. We would have, like, maybe unjustly, but it was just, you grew up like, this is what's going on, you need to be careful. And
the names was a giveaway.
Yeah.
You know, if I was Brona.
Yeah, or Orla.
Or Orla, you knew that was Catholic area, even if you didn't know. There was signs to say, a Protestant would say H, and a Catholic would say H.
Yeah.
So you knew, and you would have been stopped sometime and they would have said,
yeah. Where
say
are you
the
from?
alphabet.
Yeah. With me, I'm with a Protestant, I'm a Catholic and I'm with a Protestant. So in my religion, you have to be christened or you're not going to get into heaven. So me being a Catholic, I christened them as Catholic because that's what I'm told I have to do. I'd be really afraid of people finding out that my partner is a Protestant because, as we say, it takes one bitter person and that's all it takes is one, and then you'll be harassed, and I'm just afraid of the effect it would have. But my kids, I think they're going to be really confused because they are both of these things, but when they're here, they're only allowed to be half of themselves, and when they're here, they're only allowed to be the other half of themselves. So I would love a time where we've been looking and trying to get into a mixed community, like a mixed area where we all live together and stuff like that. It's just hard to get.
we do feel secure with the walls. It's because it's what we're used with. If they came down, there would be an awful lot of work to be done.
I just look out here in the mornings and just imagine my beautiful garden, even though I'm beside a peace wall and it's my back wall. I don't see it like that. I imagine I'm somewhere different. What it is to dream. My name is Catherine. I was born in 1969.
Oh my goodness.
I'm the same age as the peace walls, almost 50. I'm what's called a barricade baby. My mum was carried over, barricade, to the hospital. She was strapped to a chair. To let my father know I was born, I was announced on Radio Free Belfast. It's a symbol of, you know, the divide. Unfortunately for me, if they took the peace wall down, I would be very nervous. I would be very, it would, how could you say, it would actually bring up the sort of way, the anxiety, the fear. When I was a young baby, about 3, they raided my mother's home looking, just looking for, we don't really know. I was only, as I say, a 3-year-old. And we were on top of Mummy's bed, and they actually threw the mattress up and we landed and hit the wall, me and my sister. It was searching for explosives, maybe guns, that was a regular occurrence. That kind of fear that has been instilled from the day I was born. Because remember, my mother was carrying me and her fears and worries and her anxieties and everything. I mean, it's been going on in the womb before I actually arrived here.
We're talking about you. So who's your daddy?
My daddy, Michael.
Michael, that's it
What
They've been talking about trying to do something with the kids for years.
Yeah.
So I think it's appropriate, because it's 50 years ago, if you think about it, in August 1969, when the gates started to be put up.
Yeah, when I was born, Robert.
Exactly, I know.
Yeah, I'm a part of history.
50 years later, they'll take these gates away and they'll start replacing it.
Right.
But that's, you don't want that just to be a one-off event.
Yes.
So we now have to sit down
You want it to be a knock-on effect.
with the lower Shankill. So the option is going to be number 2, which is a totally see-through structure.
Yeah.
But it's okay seeing through. We can now see each other.
Yeah.
But that's only the start of the process.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
So the next project, if you like, is called Beyond the Gates.
Right.
So how do we involve the young people from the lower Shankill and from the falls? How do we involve the residents from the lower falls and the lower Shankill coming together?
Yeah.
And how do we involve the old age pensioners, the old people who remember the violence and the destruction of August 1969?
Yeah, exactly.
And now we don't want to go back to it.
No.
So we've reached a point now, which I think is a bit historic, where after 50 years, this gate's coming down, and as a first step to be replaced by a totally open gate.
Say like fund an empty building and opening it up under the one umbrella.
Well, that's
a hub.
Yeah.
For all, but for both sides to come to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just mind yourself, son. You all right?
You all right?
Here, do you want a hand? Oh, you all right? Do you want a hand?
I have to get shot there for them.
Exactly. You okay?
God, mind your ankles.
You okay?
Townsend Street interface gate. It's quiet today at 12:30 on a busy Saturday afternoon. There is a piece of work being done by both communities to one day see the end of this. Hopefully, we can really build peace in Northern Ireland. My name is Robert Harris. I decided to become a community worker because I'm very passionate about where I live. I'm very passionate about the area in general, about the education, the housing, and about helping our residents promote themselves. After the conflict, to start really dialing in and talking to our neighbours, because they are simply our neighbours. The only thing that separates us from the other side of the wall is a steel structure. Ugly as it is, we're hoping to remove all structures, but that is a long piece of work that will require a lot of trust. Me and Robert will be very proactive, working in these two communities to try and de-escalate, de-scale these barriers, but also to bring these communities together so that there is a common good. We are simply now saying that religion doesn't matter. We're trying to send that message. We don't care what church you go to on a Sunday, but while you live in these communities, we need to make your experience and your life quality that bit better. Stormont collapsed over the RHI scandal, the renewable heating scheme. There was conversations between the two areas about starting a process of meaningful change. I think the first step in all this process is about changing the gates and then seeing how they're responded with people within the community. If the Protestant and Catholic communities can live by the changes on that gate, then you will see this change moving to walls and other structures that are keeping these communities apart. But we pretty much are about changing mindset and inviting people to our community to say, we're not here to be feared. We are here to simply make change for the residents.
We have come to a point where we need to reconcile those communities which fought the war, and recognising that the war was fought not over religion, but over the British occupation. So the wall is going to remain for another 5, 10, 15 years. So in my opinion, we need to concentrate more on the gates. There are people who have been severely traumatised during the conflict and who are very reluctant to change the gates because they're afraid of a repetition of what happened to them 40 or 50 years ago when we had this serious pogrom here on the Falls.
We shall overcome. Thousands of Catholics chant this American civil rights hymn. Catholics crushed by the Protestant majority march for their rights, their dignity, and an end to the sectarian society. On the red brick walls of Bombay Street is written a sombre page of Northern Ireland's history. In August 1969, this neighbourhood was reduced to ashes. Loyalist paramilitaries, backed up by the police special forces, attacked and burned down Catholic homes.
There was armed, uniformed men came down in front of the crowd. They were doing the shooting. Then the crowd was behind them and they petrol bombed the homes. Everyone run for their lives, everyone, out of the streets. Dover Street and Percy Street were put out. They were put out of the homes. The other streets were burnt out. My mother lost her home, my sister lost her home, she lost a baby. And I didn't know where they were or what had happened to them. Everything was burnt. I don't know why these people did it or what they thought, what threat we were to them. I don't know. It wasn't troubles, it was a war. We were fighting a war. And what else could you call it?
We were sent round the houses to collect milk bottles to bring out to the adults so that they could make petrol bombs to defend the area. And then within an hour or so, I found out that my friend Geraldo, who was 15, had been killed, been shot dead. So as an 11-year-old, you're not supposed to have your 15-year-old friends killed, you know, by gunfire.
Soon after, the British Army arrived in Northern Ireland to protect the Catholic community. Young soldiers were stationed all along a dividing line. Shortly after, they were replaced by the first walls, barbed wired boundaries. Initially welcomed as a liberating force, very quickly it was seen by the Republicans as an army of occupation.
They're here to protect the state of Northern Ireland, the occupied 6 counties. So that turned me and my generation against the British. The reaction then is that you want to do something. And that something for me was to join the Republican movement. And then once you took that decision, there was only 2 things was ever going to happen. Was you were either going to go to prison or else you were either going to go to the graveyard. I was one of the lucky ones. I'm a survivor.
This boundary has for a long time accentuated the division between Republican and Loyalist neighbourhoods and echoes back to the creation of separate national identities.
Belfast bloody Belfast. I was born in Belfast and lived in Lancaster Street, a street whose most famous sons included world boxing champion John Joseph Rinty Monaghan and renowned Irish artist John Norbury. We never spoke much of the gifted man for the simple reason that he committed one of the most unpardonable sins known to us, accepting a knighthood from the British Empire, from a street that would see 3/4 of its male population interned without trial, or sent to non-cash by the infamous non-jury show trials of Diplock. It was easy to understand why. My name is Sam Miller. I'm a writer. I was born in Belfast. I lived there most of my life until I went to America. The walls are a joke. They were put up by the British to divide Protestants and Catholics and to make the British out to be the good guys. The British are always the good guys. They're always stopping these crazy Protestants and these crazy Catholics from killing each other. We all know that's not true, but this is what they do. They portray it. They put up these walls. And what have the walls done? They've made people afraid of each other. How can you know your neighbour when there's a wall, a giant wall? We knocked down the Berlin Wall, but we're building more walls here by the British. What does that say? What does that tell you? It tells you this place is a failure, that people still believe that these walls exist. And not only does it exist physically, when you have a wall, it starts to involve you mentally. So psychologically, the walls exist in people's minds. The wall is talking to them, telling them, bad people, bad people. So the wall is dictating to them what they should live, how they should live. Because how can they come out of their house and get a bus into town and sit together with Catholics and Protestants? No problems, coffee, talk about football and whatever. But yet, once they go back to where the wall is, they change. They say, thank God the wall's there to protect me. And that's why while there's walls, there'll always be that suspicion, and there'll always be people who do not want to unite, because the walls are telling them, don't unite. The monster is on the other side waiting for you, and you need these walls to protect you.
Well, as you can see, the powers that be say bring down the peace wall, take away the gates, we all going to live happy together in peace. But to be able to do that, you have to have more than this. Scenes of desolation within the Shankill area. No investment by the government, and what hope have the people in this area if our government doesn't even look to help us? My name's Paul Ferguson. I have lived in Belfast all my life. For the last 10 years I've been a paid worker for the West Belfast Athletic and Cultural Society. The war allegedly is over since 1994, but the communities are still kept apart. People keep saying about a peace process. It's not a peace process, it's an absence of violence process. Because if there was peace, the walls wouldn't be there. One of the major problems that I have found with everybody who says the walls should come down, nobody has any idea what they're going to put in their place. The walls in some areas are people's back gardens. Take away the wall, what happens? What are you going to do? Are you going to put somebody's back garden and just leave it open? Are you going to close it off? There's empty spaces, there's memorial gardens, there's different bits and pieces. What are you going to do? Somebody has to think this through and actually say, well, if we take these walls away, what are we going to give the people in its place? Not just the taking away of a wall. You can't just take things away and leave a vacuum. You have to put something in, and you also have to make it worthwhile for people to actually want the walls to come down.
one of the hardest things in the human condition is change. People like the status quo. People like the way things are. You have to have an enticement. You have to have a reason for them to do it. Oh, just take the will of the wall so we can all live together happy. That's not really the way it works. You have to make it for people's benefit. But that would mean the government taking control and actually doing something for the benefit of the people they're supposed to represent. People come here for a holiday, to make a vacation, or to do anything like that there. It's as quick as they can get up the Falls Road and down the Shankill Road. It's like I have a checklist. Must go to the Giant's Causeway, must go to the Game of Thrones, must do the Falls Shankill. 4 million people come, but we don't make an awful lot of money out of those 4 million. People in the centre of the town, the big businesses make money. The bars, the restaurants in the centre of the town. You've been along the wall. There's absolutely no economic activity along the wall. That's the longest peace wall in Northern Ireland. Well, there's no economic activity. The tourists come up, have a wee look around, go down, they go up the falls and down the Shankill, and then they go back into the town. They don't create anything for the people here except make them feel uncomfortable, because it's like you're an animal on exhibition in a zoo. That's what it feels like. People taking photographs and pointing at you.
Here in the centre of town, there's no trace of the conflict that has scarred the working class neighbourhoods. Here, the collective memory of violence has been erased. Belfast Council harks back to an earlier age to renew and promote the image of the town. Close to the seafront, a new district has come into existence. Titanic Quarter. It owes its name to the celebrated ship that was built in the nearby shipyards. The Titanic Museum, which was opened in 2012, is its main attraction. This part of Belfast looks like any other European capital.
How are you doing? I'm not too bad.
In the community, we're in favour of the fourth one, the second
exactly.
proposal.
Oh, see the see-through structure? It makes sense for all sorts of reasons.
Yes.
I mean, so the fact that you can see through it, I mean, to me, if you have closed gates, that leads to closed mains.
Closed mains, yes.
Whereas if you open the gates, you're opening.
We had always talked about
the
prospects of changing the gates for the better.
And that's why you see that beyond the gates.
There was no communication between the two communities before the gate process came along. I regret that slightly, because I think once the Good Friday Agreement and the peace process was put into play, I think these communities should have set about making that change. For whatever reason, that never happened.
After 50 years of conflict, we can learn to live together. We can learn to understand that we have more in common than what divides us. So instead of which church you go to, let's concentrate on which class we belong to and go forward campaigning together for a better future.
Mccoran. I'm the head coach and founder of the City of Belfast Boxing Academy. We're in East Belfast, and a lot of people would describe this as a loyalist area. Maybe a place that a lot of people will see on TV for reasons that aren't just quite so good, because a lot of violence and a lot of rioting and trouble. We're right on the peace line. The building actually is part of the peace line, part of the division line that separates the two communities. It's hard to believe we still have them this long on after a ceasefire. It's, you know, do we really need them? Is it keeping people safe, or is it keeping people apart? That's what we have to ask ourselves. And I think by putting doors and maybe gates and walls around various areas, that should be maybe where we start. We start to let people come together through the doors and the gates. Two shots, 3 shots. And get up. There you go. Northern Ireland and boxing goes back a long way. Boxing all around the world, I think, has been a working class sport. It's a passion for me. It probably helps keep me alive because I suffer with my depression. I have a reason to come up, to get out of bed, to come down and help. In the working class areas, boxing, we've had world champions, we've had Olympic medalists. I went to school with a boy called John Lowy, who is from my own town, Dundonald, who went and boxed for Ireland in the Olympics, and his father was a loyalist prisoner in prison at the time and sat in prison watching his son carry the Irish flag for Ireland at the Olympics and was exceptionally proud of him. These two communities have so much more in common than they don't have in common. The only thing they don't have in common is some might go to a different church, and some might call themselves British, some might call themselves Irish. But the things that they have in common are trying to pay the bills, unemployment, their children getting a good education, having a good health service. Those are the things that are really important that they have in common. That's a common struggle between them. Step. Bob, there we go. You like Bob, don't you? Up, up. Good. Okay. I'm going to put in here. Okay. So, up in, body shot. That's it. The first day we moved in, and I had a look round, and I realised that there was a place where we could have a door. I thought to myself, I think that's possible. We could put a door in there. Welcome to Narnia, as I call it, my door into another world at some stage. This wall is the peace wall, interface wall, dividing wall, whatever you like to call it. This is the wall that you've seen outside that runs into the building. So this building is actually physically part of the wall, and this is where we want the doorway for the community on the other side of the wall to be able to come in and use the facilities here. But unfortunately, with politics in Northern Ireland, it's a very, very slow process. It's a wall, so they can't walk through a wall. So if there's a door, they can knock the door, turn the handle, and come in. If they don't want to come in, they don't have to come in, but they have the choice. And having the choice is the most important thing. All they have to do is open the door, and they're transported into that other community. And I don't want it to be the other community, I want it to be their community. I want this to be a community within two communities, so that people from two communities come together in this community. And that hallway is the walkway of them coming together. Almost, they come through the door, there's a corridor, and I want that corridor to symbolise, and the door to symbolise the walk of unity.
In Seanchille, little by little, the traces of the war have been swept away. Artists have taken over the streets. The mural paintings to the glory of the paramilitary groups make way for images that illustrate the life of this neighbourhood. The paintings pay tribute to the inhabitants. Women are honoured and children favoured.
Go. Oh. Get back to the tea. There are Russian reporters here, so if they talk to you, do tell them back. So I'm stopped, and he said, "Are you a Catholic?" And I said, "Yes. I've just been to mass." And he said, "How do you feel? How do you feel about the Protestants?" I says, "What do you mean? How do I feel about the Protestants?" He said, all of the bad happenings. But I said, "There's bad happenings on both sides." And I says, I said anybody's entitled to be whatever religion they want. As long as they don't try to push it down my throat, I'm quite happy.
Yeah, there are people who are very full of hatred. Yes.
Well, yes, it says, but the hatred is bred by fear. That's all it is. You don't, what you fear you will hate, but that's the only circumstances. And so the Protestant population in the north of Ireland here are trained nearly from birth to fear the Catholics, as if we're all going to get up and do something. Oh God, yes. What? Do we like to dance here?
Oh yes,
we do. Yes,
it's a lovely atmosphere.
It is lovely, and
we have
bus
days,
runs,
we have trips away.
Yes, and bus runs and everything
Bus
else.
runs.
Yeah, you know. I talk to everybody anyway, you see, it doesn't matter. I mean, if I'm sitting beside you in the bus, I'll end up talking to you, you know. So,
well, I'll tell you this. This is two of the women there, I'm talking about 10, 15 years ago, were going to Rome. So somebody
she's
wasn't
been to every
well.
Catholic shrine there is, you know.
Somebody wasn't well, and they said, "Oh, Elsie, would you not come?" So I went to Rome, and they had tickets to see the Pope. So
you went
Pope
and saw
was
the
driving
yeah.
round, and you'd have thought he was waving. Here, what is he waving at you for? I said that because he knows I'm a Protestant. But you know, we have that atmosphere
we do,
in here.
We do.
That we're, you know, mix
but
with
that
each
does
other.
exist, you see, but
That's
among
right.
the people. As I say, the people generally are just as they always were. And the Protestants are just as hospitable as the Catholics and vice versa. And you know, when we're all dead, there's nobody comes around and says, "Is that a Catholic or a Protestant?" You know, and nobody is going to ask you when you get wherever you're going, "What are you?" You know, it's what did you do and what did you not do and all the rest of it.
And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. God bless all here.
God bless everybody, Miss.
Including the friends.
Right, bye. And the best of luck to you all, yes, right.
The Irish Forget the Past slogan has disappeared. 8 years, 8 long years of cross-community work to change this gate. A symbol of division, of separation, it has also enabled discussion between the two communities. Their peace process has finally begun. Way beyond the gates, a first step.
It's a long way to make it, but it's even harder to keep it. Because it doesn't make a matter what area of Belfast is a piece. It just takes one issue to raise its head in another part of the city, and all of a sudden you're back to square one. So we are working day by day. We never schedule any more than a week, because Belfast is at that stage now. You throw Brexit into the mix, you have the peace process, you have a non-functioning government. Belfast is being used as a tool at the minute, globally. And at any point in time, we could be in serious trouble.
So Brexit has destroyed Britain. What the ARA couldn't do, Brexit has done. They talk about leaving Europe. Ireland's part of Europe, but they say, well, we don't want to leave Ireland. We're staying here with our guns. And I keep saying, well, why do you want only a small country? Leave. But they won't leave, and this is the curse of the Irish. We got them here, we got the British here, and they don't want to leave. I say to Europeans, you just don't know how lucky you are. You're getting rid of them. We can't get rid of them, no matter what we do.
And thank God I went to prison, because I had 16 years in prison to have time to think and to read and to educate myself. I didn't educate myself by studying English, maths, geography, right? Science. I read and thought for myself and began to think, you know, it's not black and white, it's not as simple. Do you know the biggest change there is in me, Sylvie? The biggest change in me is that I'm prepared to listen to Robert McClenaghan. That's not to say that he will convince me that he's right and I'm wrong, but I'm prepared to listen. 40 years ago, I was prepared only to react. And that's the difference. And the reason I was only prepared to react is because I was brought up in a way that I didn't need to listen, because what I was fed at my mother's knee was the way it was. And she was fed the same at her mother's knee.
1, 2, 3, go! What we need to do is to let the Irish people, by way of referendum, North and South, finally, 100 years later, have a referendum on Irish unity. So for the next 2 to 3 years, we should have the discussion among the Falls and the Shankill and among everybody about what they want to see happen. If we have a referendum, struggle never ends. Struggle just changes. So once we get a united Ireland, then we have to talk about what type of Ireland. Is it going to be a capitalist Ireland? Is it going to be a socialist Ireland? And I would like to think that me and Robert or me and Noel would all be on the left together, fighting those who are opposing us from a class point of view.
You know, if unionists feel that they're the minority, a new political future is being imposed on them, it would be quite similar to what happened here for nationalists, you know, something like 100 years ago. There'd be a real need to work closely with Protestants and Unionists and Loyalists to ensure that they feel that they are a real part of whatever new political structure emerges.